Jake Martinez wiped sweat from his forehead as he looked at the broken control panel. His small ship was floating dead in space, surrounded by the twisted metal remains of an old battle. He had come here to find valuable scrap metal to sell, but now his own ship was about to become scrap too. The engine had died 3 hours ago. Jake had tried everything he knew to fix it, but nothing worked. His tools were scattered across the floor of the tiny cockpit. Wires hung loose from open panels. The smell of burned circuits filled the air. "Come on, you piece of junk," Jake said to his ship. He hit the engine start button one more time. Nothing happened. The ship stayed dark and cold. Jake was 28 years old and had been flying alone for 5 years. He made his living by finding old wrecked ships and taking useful parts from them. It was dangerous work, but it paid enough to keep him free. He did not like working for big companies or following other people's rules. Now he was trapped in the middle of nowhere. His radio was too weak to call for help. The nearest space station was weeks away, even if his engine worked. Jake looked out the window at the floating pieces of metal around him. Some of the wrecks were huge warships from a war that happened long ago. No one knew who had fought here or why. Jake picked up his tool bag and walked to the back of his ship. Maybe he could fix the engine if he took it apart completely. He had done harder repairs before. As he opened the engine compartment, he heard a strange sound. It was not the usual hum of space. It was something else, like music, made of metal. Jake stopped working and listened. The sound was getting louder. He rushed back to the cockpit and looked out the front window. In the distance, something was moving between the wrecked ships. It was not like any ship Jake had ever seen. It was long and curved, like a silver knife cutting through space. Blue lights ran along its sides in patterns that seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat. The strange ship was moving toward him. Jake tried to start his engine again, but it was still dead. He grabbed his emergency suit and started putting it on. If the other ship was hostile, he might need to jump out into space and hide in one of the wrecks. The alien ship stopped about 100 meters away. Jake could see it clearly now. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest feel tight. The metal seemed to flow like water, and the blue lights danced across its surface. He had never seen technology like this before. A beam of soft green light came from the alien ship and touched Jake's vessel. His ship shook gently, and then something impossible happened. His dead control panels came back to life. Lights turned on. The air system started working again, but Jake was not in control anymore. His ship was being pulled toward the alien vessel by some invisible force. A voice filled his cockpit. It was speaking a language he did not know, but somehow he could understand the meaning. The voice was female and sounded curious rather than threatening. "Unknown vessel, you will come aboard our ship. Do not resist. We mean no harm to you." Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Like I have a choice," he said out loud. The alien ship opened like a flower blooming. Inside, Jake could see a docking bay that glowed with the same blue light. His ship was pulled inside, and the opening closed behind him. Jake sat in his pilot chair for a moment, trying to decide what to do. He could stay in his ship and wait, or he could go out and meet whoever had captured him. Neither choice seemed good, but staying hidden would not help him in the long run. He checked his sidearm and made sure his emergency kit was ready. Then he opened his ship's door. The air in the alien docking bay was breathable. Jake could smell something like flowers and clean metal. The gravity felt normal under his feet. The walls around him were covered in patterns that seemed to move when he was not looking directly at them. 3 figures walked toward him from the far end of the bay. They were clearly not human, but they were close enough that Jake could see they were female. They were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their hair was white and moved like it was underwater. They wore clothing that looked like it was made from the same flowing metal as their ship. The one in the middle stepped forward. She was obviously the leader. Her eyes were large and silver, and when she looked at Jake, he felt like she could see right through him. "I am Zara Ka of the Kithara clan," she said. Her mouth did not move much, but Jake could understand her perfectly. "You are not from any species we know. What are you?" Jake raised his hands to show he was not holding any weapons. I'm human. My name is Jake Martinez. I'm just a salvage operator. I was looking for scrap metal when my ship broke down. The three aliens looked at each other and spoke in their own language. Jake caught some words that his brain translated as male and impossible and dangerous. Zaraka stepped closer to Jake. She was almost a foot taller than him, and her silver eyes seemed to look right into his soul. You say you are male? We do not understand this concept. In our species there are only females. We have never seen a being like you. Jake realized he was in more trouble than he had thought. These aliens did not just come from a different planet. They came from a completely different way of life. Where I come from, there are males and females, Jake said carefully. We need both to make new people. It's just how humans work. The aliens spoke to each other again. One of them, who had tools hanging from her belt, pointed at Jake's ship. She said something that made Zaraka nod. Your ship is very strange, Zaraka said to Jake. The technology is primitive, but it is built in a way we do not understand. Our engineer, Lyravel, says your repairs are impossible, yet they work. Jake looked back at his ship. To him, it just looked like a beaten-up old cargo hauler held together with spare parts and hope. I fix things with whatever I can find. It's not pretty, but it gets the job done. Show us, Zaraka said. It was not a request. Jake walked back to his ship with the three aliens following him. He opened the engine compartment and pointed to the mess of wires and jury-rigged parts inside. See this? The main power coupling burned out last week, so I bypassed it with cables from an old mining drone. And here the fuel injector was cracked, so I sealed it with paste made from melted plastic bottles. Lyravel, the engineer, bent down to look closely at Jake's work. She spoke rapidly to Zaraka in their own language. Jake could tell she was excited about something. Zaraka turned to Jake with a strange expression on her face. Our engineer says your methods should not work, yet your ship flies across the stars. How is this possible? Jake shrugged. Sometimes you just have to try things and see what happens. If it doesn't work, you try something else. That's how humans solve problems. The three aliens looked at each other again. This time their conversation lasted several minutes. Jake stood quietly and waited, trying not to look threatening. Finally, Zaraka turned back to him. Jake Martinez, of the humans, you have given us much to think about. We will not kill you today. Instead, you will stay on our ship as our guest. We have questions that need answers. Jake felt relief wash over him. Guest sounded much better than prisoner, even if it might mean the same thing. But first, Zaraka continued, you will help us with a problem. Our ship's power system is failing and our engineers cannot find the cause. Perhaps your strange human methods can succeed where our advanced knowledge has failed. Jake smiled, for the first time since his engine had died. I'd be happy to take a look. Lead the way. As they walked deeper into the alien ship, Jake wondered what he had gotten himself into. But at least he was alive, and his curiosity was stronger than his fear. These aliens needed his help, and that gave him value. In Jake's experience, being useful was the best way to stay breathing. Jake followed Zaraka and her companions through corridors that seemed to breathe with soft light. The walls were smooth and curved, and Jake could not tell where one room ended and another began. Everything flowed together like water turned solid. They stopped at a room that was bigger than Jake's entire ship. In the center stood a tall column of crystal that pulsed with blue energy. Lines of light ran from it to panels all around the room. But something was wrong. The light flickered, and sometimes went dark for several seconds. This is our power core, Lyravel said. She moved her hands over a control panel and symbols appeared in the air above it. It has worked perfectly for 300 years. Now it fails more each day. Jake walked around the crystal column, looking at it from different angles. He had never seen anything like it, but he recognized the signs of a failing system. What have you tried to fix it? We have replaced every component twice, Lyravel said. We have run diagnostics that found no problems. We have performed the sacred maintenance rituals exactly as our ancestors taught us. Nothing works. Jake nodded. He had dealt with stubborn machines before. Can you show me how the power flows through the system? Lyravel touched her control panel, and the lines of light became brighter. Jake could see the energy moving from the crystal to different parts of the ship, but there was something strange about the pattern. The energy seemed to take the longest possible path to each destination. "Why does the power go all the way around the ship to reach that panel?" Jake asked, pointing to a control station that was only a few meters from the crystal. "Because that is the proper way," Lyravel said. "The energy must follow the sacred patterns that ensure perfect distribution and harmony." Jake scratched his head. "But what if we just ran a direct line? It would be faster and use less power." The three aliens looked shocked. Zaraka spoke first. "You cannot change the sacred patterns. They have been used for thousands of years. They are perfect." "Maybe," Jake said. "But perfect for what? If they're not working anymore, maybe it's time to try something different." Before anyone could stop him, Jake pulled a length of cable from his toolkit. He had brought it from his ship, hoping to fix his engine. Now he connected one end to the crystal and ran the other end directly to the nearest control panel. Alarms started ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every surface. Lyravel shouted something in her own language and reached for Jake's cable. "Wait," Jake said. "Look at the power readings." The flickering had stopped. The blue light in the crystal was steady and bright. The control panel that Jake had connected was working better than before. Lyravel stared at her instruments. "This is impossible. You have broken the harmony of the system, yet it works better than before." "Sometimes the old ways stop working," Jake said. "When that happens, you have to find new ways." Zaraka walked closer to Jake. Her silver eyes were intense. "You speak of changing traditions that are older than your species. This is dangerous thinking." "Maybe," Jake said. "But what's more dangerous? Trying something new or letting your ship die because you won't change anything?" The alien leader was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke to Lyravel in their own language. The engineer nodded and began working at her controls. "We will test your method on other systems," Zaraka said. "But carefully. If you are wrong, you could destroy us all." Jake spent the next several hours working with Lyravel to modify the ship's power grid. Each change was small, but together they made a big difference. The ship felt more alive than before. The lights were brighter, and the air was fresher. While they worked, Jake learned more about the Cathera people. They had once been a great civilization that controlled many star systems. But something had gone wrong. Their population was shrinking and their technology was failing. "We were perfect once," Lyravel explained as she watched Jake rewire another power junction. "Our bodies, our minds, our society, everything was in perfect balance." "What happened?" Jake asked. "We do not know. Our children became fewer each generation. Our machines began to fail despite perfect maintenance. Our enemies grew stronger, while we grew weaker." Jake had been thinking about this problem since he arrived on the ship. Maybe being perfect was the problem. "Where I come from, we have a saying, 'The thing that doesn't bend will break.'" Lyravel did not understand. "How can perfection be a problem? Perfect things do not fail." "Perfect things can't change," Jake explained. "And everything needs to change sometimes. The universe changes, so you have to change with it." As they talked, Jake learned something else about the Cathara. They were all female, and they had been for thousands of years. They created new people, using advanced machines that combined genetic material in precise ways. But those machines were failing too. "Your species has males and females," Lyravel asked. "How do you create offspring?" Jake felt his face get hot. "Well, it's kind of complicated, but basically we need both males and females to make new people. It mixes up the genetic material naturally." "This sounds chaotic and inefficient." "It is," Jake agreed. "But it also means each new person is different from their parents. Sometimes those differences help them survive in ways their parents couldn't." Lyravel was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful. "Perhaps that is why your repairs work when ours fail. You are accustomed to chaos and change." Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm that was different from the others. This one was urgent and frightening. Zaraka's voice came through the ship's communication system. All crew to battle stations, enemy ships detected, Veltar Empire forces approaching. Jake did not know who the Veltar Empire was, but he could tell from Lyravel's expression that they were bad news. "Who are they?" he asked. "Our enemies," she said. "They hunt us across the galaxy. They want our technology, and they will kill us all to get it." Jake followed Lyravel as she ran through the corridors toward the ship's bridge. Other Kithara crew members were moving with practiced efficiency, but Jake could see fear in their silver eyes. The bridge was a circular room with a huge window that showed the stars ahead. But 3 of those stars were moving and they were getting bigger. Jake realized they were ships, and they were much larger than the Kithara vessel. 3 heavy cruisers, said Novarin, the warrior captain. She was taller than the others and carried weapons that looked like they were made of crystallized light. "They have us outnumbered and outgunned." Zaraka stood in the center of the bridge, her hands moving over controls that appeared in the air around her. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Ready all weapons." Jake watched the alien ships getting closer. He could see weapon ports opening along their hulls. These were not exploration vessels or cargo ships. They were built for war. "Can you outrun them?" Jake asked. "No," Novarin said. "Their ships are faster than ours. We will have to fight." Jake looked at the tactical display that showed the positions of all the ships. The Kithara vessel was surrounded by the debris field where Jake had been found. The enemy ships were coming from 3 different directions. "What if you don't fight them head-on?" Jake suggested. "What if you use the wreckage to hide and hit them from unexpected angles?" Novarin looked at him like he was crazy. "That is not how space battles are fought. Ships face each other in honorable combat." "Maybe that's why you're losing," Jake said. "Your enemies aren't being honorable. They're using 3 ships against 1. Zaraka turned to look at Jake. "What do you suggest, human?" Jake pointed at the tactical display. "See that big wreck? There? If you could get behind it, the enemy ships would have to come around 1 at a time. You could fight 3 separate battles instead of 1 big one." "It is possible," Lyravel said. "With the power modifications Jake made, we have more speed than before." Novarin shook her head. "It goes against all our traditions of warfare." "Your traditions are getting you killed," Jake said. "Sometimes you have to throw out the rulebook and do whatever works." The enemy ships were close enough now that Jake could see individual weapon turrets. In a few minutes, they would be in firing range. Zarka made her decision. "We will try the humans' plan. Novarin, take us behind the largest wreck. Prepare for unconventional combat." The Kithara ship suddenly accelerated toward a massive piece of debris that had once been a battleship. Jake felt his stomach drop as the artificial gravity struggled to keep up with the rapid maneuvers. Behind them, the 3 enemy ships spread out to pursue. Just as Jake had predicted, they could not all attack at the same time while navigating around the debris. "First enemy ship coming around the wreck," Novarin reported. "They are alone and in range." "Fire all weapons," Zaraka ordered. The Kithara ship's weapons lit up space with beams of blue energy. The enemy ship had been expecting a traditional battle, not an ambush from behind cover. Its shields failed quickly and explosions bloomed along its hull. "Direct hit," Novarin said. "Enemy ship is disabled." The second enemy ship came around the other side of the wreck, but now the Kithara were ready for it. They used the debris as cover, popping out to fire and then hiding again before the enemy could respond effectively. Jake watched the battle with amazement. The Kithara were incredible fighters when they stopped trying to follow ancient rules and started adapting to the situation. "The third ship is retreating," Novarin on. Jake woke up in a small room that the Kithara had given him. The walls glowed with soft light that changed color with the time of day. It had been 3 weeks since the first battle with the Veltar Empire, and things had not been peaceful. The enemy had sent more ships to hunt them. The Kithara vessel had been running and fighting almost constantly. Jake had learned to sleep through the sound of weapons fire and emergency alarms. He got dressed and walked to the bridge, where he found the crew looking tired and worried. Dark circles under their silver eyes showed they had not been sleeping well either. "Status report," Jake said to Novarin, who had become his closest friend among the warriors. 2 more enemy ships detected 4 hours ago, she said. We lost them in an asteroid field, but they will find us again. They always do. Jake looked at the star map on the main display. Red dots showed all the places where Veltar ships had been spotted in the last month. There were too many to count. How many ships are they using to hunt you? Jake asked. At least 50, Zaraka said as she joined them on the bridge. Perhaps more. The Veltar Empire has decided we are a priority target. Jake whistled low. What did you do to make them so angry? We exist, Zaraka said simply. Our technology is advanced beyond theirs. They fear what we might become if we survive. Over the past 3 weeks, Jake had learned more about Cathara technology. Their ships were powered by crystals that turned matter directly into energy. Their weapons could cut through any known armor. Their computers could think faster than any artificial intelligence. But all of that technology was failing. The crystals were becoming unstable. The weapons were losing power. The computers were making strange errors. It's like your whole civilization is getting old and wearing out, Jake had told Lyravel a few days earlier. That is exactly what is happening, she had replied. We have been perfect for so long that we have forgotten how to grow and change. Now we are dying. Today, Jake had a new idea. He had been studying the Cathara ship's design and noticed something important. Everything was built for perfection, but nothing was built for repair. Lyravel, Jake called to the engineer. I want to try something with the weapon systems. She looked suspicious. What kind of something? Your energy weapons are incredibly powerful, but they overheat after a few shots and take forever to cool down. What if we modified them to be less perfect but more practical? Explain, Zaraka said. Jake pulled up a technical display of the ship's main weapon. Right now, each shot uses 100% of the weapon's power and creates a perfect energy beam. But what if we used only 70% power per shot? The beam would be weaker, but we could fire 3 times as fast. Lyravel shook her head. Imperfect weapons are not worthy of the Kithara. Imperfect weapons that work are better than perfect weapons that don't, Jake argued. In a real fight, I'd rather have a gun that fires 10 weak shots than one that fires 2 perfect shots and then breaks. Before anyone could stop him, Jake started modifying the weapon controls. He had learned enough about Kithara technology to make basic changes. Within an hour, he had reprogrammed the main guns to operate at reduced power but much higher speed. Alarms suddenly filled the bridge. 2 Veltar cruisers approaching fast, Novarin announced. They found us. Jake looked at Zaraka. Want to test my modifications? The alien leader hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Battle stations. Prepare to engage the enemy. The 2 Veltar ships were larger than the Cathara vessel and heavily armored. They approached in a standard attack formation, expecting another traditional space battle. Enemy ships in range, Novarin reported. Fire, Zaraka ordered. Instead of the usual 2 massive energy blasts, the Kithara ship sent out a rapid stream of smaller beams. The enemy ship's shields, designed to stop a few powerful hits, were overwhelmed by the constant barrage. Their shields are down, Novarin said with excitement. How is this possible? Volume of fire, Jake explained. Sometimes 20 small hits work better than 2 big ones. The battle was over in minutes. The enemy ships, damaged and confused, retreated back into hyperspace. Remarkable, Lyravel said as she studied the weapon performance data. The total energy used was 30% less than a traditional attack, but the damage was twice as effective. Jake smiled. That's the power of good enough engineering. It's not perfect, but it works better in the real world. Over the next few days, Jake worked with the Cathara crew to modify other systems on the ship. He taught them how to make backup systems for critical components. He showed them how to use spare parts from different machines to fix things that broke. Most importantly, he taught them that failure was not something to be ashamed of. It was something to learn from. In human engineering, we expect things to break, Jake explained to a group of Cathara technicians. So we design everything to be fixable. Your technology is so advanced that you forgot things could break. Novarin was initially the most resistant to Jake's ideas. As the ship's warrior captain, She believed in honor, tradition, and doing things the right way. That changed during a boarding action. The Kithara ship had been hiding in a nebula when a Veltar strike team found them. Enemy soldiers in powered armor teleported directly onto the bridge before the ship's defenses could stop them. Jake was in the engine room when the attack began. He heard the sound of energy weapons and ran toward the bridge. In the corridor, he found Nova Rin fighting 3 enemy soldiers by herself. She was skilled with her crystalline weapons, but the enemy armor was too strong. One of the soldiers had her cornered and was about to strike a killing blow. Jake looked around desperately for something to help. He saw a maintenance panel with some loose wiring. Without thinking, he grabbed the wires and jammed them into the enemy soldier's armor. The soldier's suit short-circuited and shut down. The warrior inside fell over, helpless in his heavy armor. Jake had used the enemy's advanced technology against him with simple human ingenuity. "How did you know that would work?" Nova Rin asked after they had defeated the other attackers. "I didn't," Jake admitted, "but I figured their armor had to have some kind of electrical system, and electricity doesn't like to go where it's not supposed to go." Nova Rin stared at him for a moment, then started laughing. "You risked both our lives on a guess?" "Sometimes a guess is all you have," Jake said. "The important thing is to try something instead of giving up." From that day forward, Nova Rin became one of Jake's strongest supporters. She started teaching the other warriors how to fight in unconventional ways. Instead of formal duels, they practiced ambushes and dirty tricks. Instead of perfect formations, they learned to adapt to chaos. The change in the Kithara crew was remarkable. They stopped worrying so much about doing things perfectly and started focusing on doing things that worked. Their ship became more efficient, their weapons more effective, and their tactics more flexible. But Jake knew they needed more than just tactical improvements. The Kithara race was still dying out and the Veltar Empire was still hunting them. They needed a bigger solution. That solution came from an unexpected source, Mirasol, the ship's healer and scientist. "I have been studying your human biology," she told Jake one day. "Your genetic structure is fascinating. Where our genes are stable and unchanging, yours are chaotic and adaptable. Is that good or bad?" Jake asked. "It may be exactly what we need," Mirasol said. "Our reproductive technology is failing because our genetic code has become too perfect. It cannot adapt to new challenges, but your human genes might be able to teach our genes how to change again." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that you might be the key to saving our entire species. But the process would be dangerous for you. We have never attempted genetic integration with an alien species before." Jake thought about this for a long time. He had come to care about the Kithara people. They had accepted him and learned from him. In return, he had learned things about the universe that no other human had ever known. "What would I have to do?" he asked. "Allow us to study your genetic structure and attempt to combine it with ours. If successful, it could revitalize our entire civilization. If it fails, I could die," Jake finished. "Yes." Jake looked around the ship that had become his home. He thought about Zaraka's wisdom, Lyravel's curiosity, Nova Rin's courage, and Mirasol's dedication. He thought about the Veltar Empire hunting these people to extinction. "When do we start?" he said. Mirasol smiled, and Jake saw hope in her, silver eyes for the first time since he had met her. The next phase of his journey was about to begin, and it would change everything for both humans and Kithara. Jake had already proven that human ingenuity could solve alien problems. Now he would discover if human biology could save an alien race. The future of an entire civilization might depend on one human's willingness to take the ultimate risk. Jake lay on a medical table that felt like it was made of warm light. Tubes and wires connected his body to machines he could not understand. The room around him glowed with soft blue energy, and strange symbols moved across the walls like living, writing. Mirasol stood beside him, her silver eyes focused on displays that showed Jake's vital signs. "The genetic mapping is complete," she said. "Your DNA structure is more complex than we expected." "Is that good or bad?" Jake asked. His voice was weak because of the drugs they had given him to prepare for the procedure. It is remarkable, Mirasol replied. Human genes contain backup systems, repair mechanisms, and adaptive sequences that we have never seen before. Your species has built change and survival into your very cells. Jake had been in the medical bay for 3 days while Mirasol studied his biology. During that time, the ship had been running from more Veltar hunting parties. The sounds of combat and emergency maneuvers had become constant background noise. Are you ready to begin? Mirasol asked. Jake nodded. Let's do this. The procedure was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. He felt his consciousness expand as alien technology interfaced directly with his nervous system. Images flashed through his mind. The history of the Kithara race, their rise to perfection, and their slow decline into stagnation. He saw their homeworld, a planet of crystal cities and flowing gardens. He felt the pride of a civilization that had eliminated war, disease, and death. He understood their shock when perfection began to crumble around them. But he also felt something else, the potential for rebirth. His human genes were not just being studied by the Kithara technology. They were teaching it, showing it how to change, how to adapt, how to survive in an imperfect universe. The process took 12 hours. When Jake finally woke up, he felt different. Not physically, but mentally. He could sense things about the ship that he had never noticed before. The flow of energy through the systems, the thoughts of the crew members, the health of the living crystal that powered everything. How do you feel? Mirasol asked. Strange, Jake said honestly. Like I'm more connected to everything. The integration was successful beyond our hopes, Mirasol explained. Your genetic patterns have been incorporated into our biological matrix. But more than that, they have taught our technology how to evolve. Over the next few weeks, the changes became obvious. The ship's crystal power core began generating new growth patterns. Systems that had been failing for decades suddenly started repairing themselves. The artificial intelligence that controlled ship functions became more flexible and creative. But the most dramatic changes were in the crew. Kithara, who had been sterile for generations, began showing signs of renewed fertility. Their lifespans, which had been shortening with each generation, started extending again. It is like our entire species is remembering how to live, Zaraka told Jake as they stood on the bridge watching repair teams fix systems that had not worked in years. The improvements could not have come at a better time. The Veltar Empire had increased their hunting efforts, sending larger fleets to track down the lone Kithara vessel. But now the ship was stronger and more adaptable than ever before. Jake worked with Lyravel to redesign entire sections of the vessel. They tore out ancient systems that had become too rigid and replaced them with modular designs based on human engineering principles. Your species builds things like they expect them to break, Lyravel observed as they installed backup power cables throughout the ship. Because they will break, Jake said. Everything breaks eventually. The trick is to make sure that when one thing breaks, something else can take over. They created redundant systems for everything critical. Multiple power sources, backup life support, spare computer cores. The ship became less elegant but much more reliable. The new approach was tested when they encountered the largest Veltar fleet yet. 12 heavy cruisers led by a massive battleship. We cannot fight that many ships, Novarine said as she studied the tactical display. We don't have to fight them all at once, Jake replied. We just have to fight them smarter. Jake had been studying Veltar tactics and noticed they always attacked in the same formations. They were efficient, but predictable. Human military thinking emphasized unpredictability and adaptation. What if we split up, Jake suggested. Make them think we're running, then hit them from different directions when they spread out to chase us? Split the ship? Zaraka asked. That is impossible. Not split the ship. Split into multiple ships. Jake explained his idea. During their recent modifications, they had built several small emergency vessels that could detach from the main ship. These were originally designed as escape pods, but Jake thought they could be used as attack craft. We use the main ship as bait, he said. Make it look damaged and fleeing. When the enemy spreads out to surround us, the small ships attack from the sides and rear. It was a risky plan that went against every Kithara tradition of space combat. but they had learned to trust Jake's unconventional ideas. The battle began with the main ship limping away from the Veltar fleet, trailing fake engine exhaust and broadcasting distress signals. The enemy ships spread out in a hunting formation, each group taking a different vector to cut off the escape routes. When the enemy was scattered across several light minutes of space, Jake gave the signal. 5 small Kithra vessels detached from hidden docking bays and attacked the rear elements of the Veltar fleet. The enemy had not expected to be attacked by ships they could not see on their sensors. The small vessels used new stealth technology that Jake had helped develop, based on human techniques for radar avoidance. The battle turned into chaos, which was exactly what Jake had wanted. Chaos favored the side that could adapt quickly, and the Kithara had learned to embrace change. Enemy formation is breaking apart, Nova Rin reported with excitement. They are trying to regroup, but our ships are too fast and unpredictable. By the time the battle ended, 6 Veltar ships had been destroyed and the rest were fleeing. The Kithara had not lost a single vessel. This is impossible, the captured Veltar commander said when he was brought to the bridge. Kithara do not fight like this. Your tactics are chaotic and undisciplined. We learned from a good teacher, Zaraka replied, looking at Jake with something that might have been pride. Word of the victory spread quickly through Kithra communication networks. Other clans that had been hiding throughout the galaxy began to make contact. They had heard rumors of a clan that was winning battles against the Veltar Empire and wanted to know how. Within months, the first clan ships began arriving at a secret rendezvous point in an abandoned star system. Jake found himself at the center of a growing alliance of Kithara who wanted to learn the new ways of fighting and surviving. You have become a teacher to our entire race, Zaraka told him as they watched the growing fleet of clan ships in the asteroid base they had established. Jake felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. I'm just one guy. I don't know if I can help all of these people. You have already helped us more than you know, Mirasol said. The genetic integration has been successful in volunteers from 3 different clans. Our birth rates are increasing, for the first time in centuries. But Jake knew the real test was still coming. The Veltar Empire would not ignore the growing Kithara alliance forever. Eventually, they would send a fleet large enough to destroy the asteroid base and everyone in it. When that day came, Jake wanted to be ready with something that would shock the galaxy. A combined fleet of Kithara vessels that fought like humans, but possessed technology far beyond anything the enemy had ever seen. The integration had worked both ways. The Kithara had learned adaptability from humans, but Jake had gained something too. He could now interface directly with their technology, understanding it at a level no other human had ever achieved. He spent his days working with engineers from different clans, sharing human concepts of modular design, redundant systems, and adaptive strategies. He taught them that imperfection could be a strength and that chaos could be a weapon. More importantly, he taught them that survival was more important than tradition, that a living, changing culture was better than a perfect, dying one. As he stood in the command center of their growing base, watching Kithara from dozens of clans working together in ways they never had before, Jake realized he had become something he never expected. The bridge between 2 species. The humans had given him the ability to adapt and survive in any situation. The Kithara had given him the tools to change the galaxy. Together, they might just be strong enough to face whatever came next. The final test was approaching, and Jake could feel it in the stars themselves. The Veltar Empire was preparing something big, and when it came, the Alliance would need every advantage they could get. But for the first time since arriving on the Kithara ship, Jake felt confident they could win. Not because they were perfect, but because they had learned to be something better, adaptable, creative, and willing to change when change was needed. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when human ingenuity met alien technology, and it was going to be spectacular. Jake stood in the command center of the asteroid base, watching hundreds of ships move in formations that would have been impossible just months before. Kithara vessels from 30 different clans had joined the alliance, and each one had been modified with human engineering principles. The ships no longer looked like works of art. They were scarred with armor patches, bristling with backup systems, and covered in the kind of practical modifications that Jake had taught them to embrace. They were uglier than before, but they were also stronger and more reliable. Veltar fleet detected at the edge of the system, Narration announced from her position at the tactical station. Estimated strength, 200 ships, including 5 battleships. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The Veltar Empire had finally decided to end the Kythera resistance once and for all. How long until they reach us? Zaraka asked. 18 hours at their current speed, Narration replied. Jake looked at the display showing their own forces. 80 Kythera ships ranging from small fighters to medium cruisers. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1 and the enemy had much heavier firepower. Orders, Admiral? Lyravel asked. Jake still felt strange about the title the Kythera had given him. He was not a military officer or a trained strategist. He was just a human who had learned to think differently than everyone else in the galaxy. Send the evacuation signal to all non-combat vessels, Jake ordered. I want every civilian transport out of the system within 12 hours. Then we implement Plan Chaos. Plan Chaos was Jake's name for the strategy they had developed over the past few months. Instead of meeting the enemy in traditional battle formations, they would use the asteroid field itself as a weapon. The Kythera had spent weeks preparing the battlefield. Asteroids had been hollowed out and filled with explosives. Hidden weapon platforms had been built inside seemingly empty rocks. Fake sensor contacts had been planted to confuse enemy scanners. Most importantly, they had prepared multiple fallback positions throughout the system. If one defensive line failed, they could retreat to the next one and continue fighting. All clan leaders report ready, Zaraka announced. The Alliance fleet is at your command. Jake took a deep breath and opened a communication channel to every ship in the fleet. Hundreds of silver-eyed faces appeared on screens around him, all looking to him for leadership. Today, the Veltar Empire thinks they will destroy us, Jake said. They have bigger ships, more weapons, and more experience in traditional warfare. They expect us to meet them in honorable combat and die like our ancestors did. He paused and smiled. They're going to be very disappointed. The Kythera crews laughed, and Jake could see the confidence in their expressions. They had learned to trust his unconventional methods. Remember what we've practiced, Jake continued. Forget about honor and tradition. Fight dirty. Use every trick we've taught you. Make them think they're fighting ghosts and shadows. When this battle is over, I want the galaxy to know that the Kythera have learned to survive. The enemy fleet entered the system exactly on schedule. The Veltar ships moved in perfect formation, their heavy armor gleaming in the light of the distant star. They were impressive and terrifying, the product of a military culture that had conquered dozens of worlds. They were also completely unprepared for what Jake had planned. The first surprise came when they entered the asteroid field. What looked like empty space suddenly erupted with explosions as hidden mines detonated around the lead ships. The perfect formation broke apart as captains tried to avoid the unexpected obstacles. Phase 1 complete, Narration reported. Enemy formation disrupted, 17 ships damaged. Begin Phase 2, Jake ordered. Small Kythera fighters emerged from hidden positions inside asteroids and attacked the confused enemy ships. Instead of trying to destroy the larger vessels, they targeted sensors and communication arrays with surgical precision. Within minutes, the Veltar fleet was partially blind and having trouble coordinating their movements. Ship captains were issuing conflicting orders, and their careful battle plans were falling apart. This is not how space battles are supposed to be fought, the Veltar fleet commander broadcast on all frequencies. Come out and face us with honor. Jake smiled and opened a response channel. Honor doesn't keep you alive, adaptation does. Phase 3 began as the main Kythera force attacked from multiple directions at once. Instead of focusing on single targets, they used coordinated strikes to overwhelm enemy defenses. Jake had taught them to fight like a pack of wolves rather than individual warriors. The battle raged for hours, moving through different sections of the asteroid field. Every time the Veltar forces thought they had cornered the Kythera fleet, their targets would vanish into hidden passages and attack from somewhere else. Enemy morale is breaking, Mirasol reported from her position monitoring Veltar communications. Several ships are requesting permission to retreat. But Jake knew the battle was not over yet. The Veltar Empire had not sent their largest fleet just to give up at the first sign of resistance. They would escalate rather than accept defeat. He was right. The enemy commander ordered his 5 battleships to converge on the asteroid base itself. If they could not defeat the Kythera fleet in open combat, they would destroy the source of their new tactics. All ships fall back to defensive positions around the base, Jake ordered. Prepare for the final phase. The 5 Veltar battleships were massive vessels, each one larger than 10 Kythera cruisers combined. Their weapons could crack asteroids with single shots, and their armor could withstand anything the Alliance fleet could throw at them. But Jake had prepared for this moment too. "Lyravel, are the special modifications ready?" he asked. "All systems show green," she replied. "But Jake, this has never been tested on such a large scale." "Then today we find out if human engineering principles work with Kythera super technology," Jake said. The special modification was Jake's most ambitious project yet. He had convinced the Kythera engineers to link all their ship power cores together through a temporary energy network. Instead of 80 separate vessels, they would become one massive weapon system. "All ships, connect to the network on my mark," Jake announced. "Remember, this only works if everyone contributes equally." The 5 Veltar battleships opened fire as they approached the base. Asteroid chunks exploded around the defending fleet, and several smaller Kythera ships took heavy damage. But the Alliance held their positions. "Network connection established," Lyravel reported. "All ships linked. Power levels at maximum." Jake felt the energy flowing through the combined fleet like electricity through his nervous system. 80. Power cores working as one. Their output amplified by human-designed focusing arrays and Kythera crystal technology. "Fire," Jake said quietly. The combined energy beam that erupted from the Alliance fleet was unlike anything ever seen in galactic warfare. It was not just powerful. It was intelligent, adapting and adjusting as it traveled through space. The beam struck the lead Veltar battleship and did not just destroy it. It completely disintegrated the massive vessel, turning millions of tons of metal and armor into particles of dust. The remaining 4 battleships tried to retreat, but the beam tracked them like a living thing. Within seconds, the most powerful ships in the Veltar fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The rest of the enemy fleet did not wait to see what other impossible weapons the Kythera might have developed. They fled the system in complete disorder, abandoning their mission and their wounded comrades. "Victory," Novarine announced, and her voice was filled with wonder. "Complete victory." Jake slumped in his command chair, exhausted by the mental effort of coordinating the energy network. But he was smiling. They had not just won a battle. They had proven that the Alliance could stand against any threat. In the days that followed, news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien species that had been conquered or threatened by the Veltar Empire began sending envoys to the Kythera Alliance. They wanted to learn the secrets of the new fighting methods and perhaps form their own alliances. Jake found himself at the center of a growing interstellar coalition. The Kythera clans were no longer hiding in the shadows, afraid of extinction. They had become the nucleus of a new kind of civilization, one based on adaptation and cooperation rather than domination. "You have given us more than survival," Zaraka told Jake as they stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt asteroid base. "You have given us hope for the future." Jake watched construction crews working on new ship designs that combined the best elements of human and Kythera technology. Children who had been born since the genetic integration played in zero-gravity parks, their laughter echoing through corridors that had once been filled with the sounds of war. "I didn't do this alone," Jake said. "Your people were ready to change. They just needed someone to show them it was okay to be imperfect." "And what about you?" Zaraka asked. "What will you do now that the immediate danger is past?" Jake had been thinking about that question for weeks. The Kythera Alliance was strong enough to survive without him now. Other humans were beginning to arrive as news of the partnership spread. He was no longer the only bridge between the species. "I think I'll explore," Jake said. "There are a lot of star